Hello you guys, it's me Melanie, and today I'm going to be doing every book I read in 2022. So I read 36 books in 2022. So first I'm going to be going through my Storygraph and my Goodreads, which I will link below so you guys can follow me. I'm going to go through the statistics that they give me for those, about what types of books I like to read and the lengths and everything like that. And then I'm going to go through my stack of all the books that I read, as well as the ones that I don't have physically with me. So yeah, let's just get started. Alright you guys, so we have a visitor. I hope that her tail is not in the way, but my sister's cat is joining us for the video. First thing we're going to do is go through my Goodreads. It says I read 36 books, 10,853 pages, and the shortest book I read was Putting an X Through Anxiety, which was 60 pages, and the longest book was Children of Blood and Bone, which was 544 pages. My average book length was 301 pages. The most shelved book I read was The Great Gatsby. The least shelved was Putting an X Through Anxiety. Hi, baby. She's gonna sit with me, I guess, for the video. My average rating was 3.7, which I feel like is pretty good. I didn't feel like I had a really good year of reading, and I set a book challenge for myself on Goodreads and Storygraph of 25 books for this year, and I actually read 36 books. So I was really excited about that. For Storygraph, 36 books, my book moods are emotional, adventurous, lighthearted, reflective, mysterious, dark, and then from then it gets kind of small. It says I usually read medium-paced books. I'm really curious if you guys can see Millie right here. She's just making biscuits. Let me take a video. It's so cute. Fiction and nonfiction. I read 86% fiction, 14% nonfiction. That sounds about right. I definitely got more into nonfiction this year. I read a couple like self-help books / religious books, genres, mostly young adult, romance, contemporary. So my star ratings, I feel like this is a pretty good distribution. So now that we're done looking at all of those charts and everything, we're just going to get into every book that I read this year. Alright you guys, I hope you can see me back here. I'm just going to start going through my Goodreads in the order of reverse date read, and starting with the cheat sheet. So this was the first book I read in January, and I absolutely hated this book. I gave it 1 star, and this is Friends to Lovers. He's a football player, she's a ballerina, and he's in the NFL. Main character, she was such a pick-me girl to me. She was like, my best friend, who's a guy, always dates models, and all they do is they love social media, and I'm a dancer, and I'm athletic, and I was just like, okay, girl. The second book I read was A Total 360. Okay, this book was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I gave this 5 stars. A lot of people probably read this in middle or high school. I had to read this for a class in college. We were doing a study on young adult books. This book is about some children who live in a rough area, and there's kind of a class dispute between the rich kids in town and the poor kids. And this book, it made me cry. I thought it was just, I love this book, really. Next book I read, it's called A Wrinkle in Time. I literally hated this book. I had to read this for the same class that I had to read The Outsiders for, and I gave it 2 stars. Guys, I just remembered I have a reading journal where I wrote down like book reviews for all my books this year. It's fantastical. To me it was confusing. It's very short. And it's about a girl named Meg who's often misunderstood, and her younger brother is like a genius for his age. I think he was like 3 or 4, something like that. Their father's been missing a long time, and so they want to try and get the chance to save him, and they must go through all these like magical things to get him back. There was not enough world building for me. I just felt like it was a bunch of stuff kind of thrown together and didn't really explain why things happened. So honestly, I wouldn't recommend this book. So the next books I read were a duology, and that was Daughter of the Pirate King and Daughter of the Siren Queen. I gave the first book, Daughter of the Pirate King, 3.75 stars. In hindsight, I probably would bump it up to 4 stars. It was just kind of a regular, fun little enemies to lovers book. It's exciting, it's fun, nautical. I like it. The main character, Alosa, is a little bit of a she's the strong female protagonist, but kind of in the 2012 kind of way, where she was like, I'm a queen, like, I'm so cool and I swing swords and no other girls are like me. So that part was a little bit annoying, but once you get past that and as the books go on, it definitely is not as annoying. And for the second one, I also gave it 3.75 stars. Probably again would bump that up to 4. It's all pretty much the same, it's just a continuation. Next book I read is probably one of my least favorite books I read all year. This book is The Bride Test by Helen Hoang. I did give it 2 stars, but to be honest, I would give it like 1 star for me. I just know that it's not that bad objectively. The main character lives in Vietnam and she has opportunity to move to America to temporarily date a woman's son. She meets this woman at her job where she works as a cleaner in a hotel, I believe. I've seen so many good reviews of this. It's just honestly my biggest complaint was I gave this a 5 on the spiciness scale. It's like every other sentence the main male character would be thinking, oh my gosh, her butt is swinging back and forth, and I'm just like, is that necessary? Like, having spice in a book, I don't mind a little bit, but it was literally like every other paragraph. Next book I read, I wrote down 4.5 stars, but y'all can see I'm literally changing this to 5 stars right now because I think about this book all the freaking time. I love this book. It is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I read this book and then I went to see the movie and I thought both were great. It's about a girl growing up alone pretty much in the marshes of North Carolina, and she's bullied a lot by the townspeople, and it's just kind of about how she grows up. There's an alternating timeline where in the present day she is being tried for a murder, and so you kind of go back and forth between the present and past to find out if she did it or not. I love this book. This is probably my favorite book that I read all year. So the next book we have is The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. This book I had to read for my class, and it is pretty fantastical. I think that if you like Harry Potter, you would like this. It's about a girl. In this world, everybody has a thing called a demon. It's like a little animal that follows you around, and it can switch between forms, but it stays in the form that I think is most like kind of what your soul is like. And so she and her demon travel up north to try and save her best friend from these people called the Gobblers, which are basically like cannibals. I did like this book. The biggest issue with it, if I remember, are that some of the chapters are like so long, like 70 pages long. But this one I gave 4 stars. I think on Goodreads I gave it 3 stars, so I would give it probably a solid 3.5, 3.75. It's a series of 3 books, and I was going to continue it, but at this point I don't really know if I will. I think I would have to reread this, and I don't think I liked it enough to reread it and then continue, because I read this back in March. Right, the next book I read is Children of Blood and Bone. This book is by Tomi Adeyemi. I believe that's how you pronounce it, but I might be wrong. I gave this book 2.5 stars in my reading journal. In reality, I'd probably give it about 3 stars. Now looking back on it, it's not a bad book. It's multi-POV, which I really liked. I feel like it's pretty magical, it's fantastical. If you love fantasy, I definitely recommend this book, but if you're someone who's just trying to get into fantasy or you're not super huge on it, I wouldn't recommend it. My biggest complaint about it was like there was a lot of plot armor. It was super long. I mean, this was the longest book I read all year. If you guys remember looking at the Goodreads, it's like 550 something pages, I think. And it could have been like 300 pages. I think if it had been 300 or so, or like 330, something like that, I probably would have given this 4.5 stars. But it was just so long for the sake of being long. And there is a sequel to this, which I did want to read when I finished up this book, but at this point I don't think I probably will pick it up. The next book I read was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is basically about the movie star Evelyn Hugo, and it's kind of just the story of her life and all of her husbands, and you get to find out who her true love was. I did love that aspect of the book. Finding out who she really loved, it made so much sense to me. Everybody loves this book, and I do recommend that you read it. If you don't like spice, I would say like maybe think about it before you read it. It's not super explicit, but it does have lots of sexual themes throughout the whole book. The characters do often use sex to get what they want. Things like that, for me, I just don't really enjoy reading about. So for me, I didn't love it. The next book I read My stack is just falling over here. I don't know if you guys can see. It's American Dirt by Janine Cummings. I did not really enjoy this book. This is about a mother and son who are trying to flee Mexico in an attempt to make it to the United States because the cartel is after them. I gave it 3 stars, but if I'm gonna be honest, looking back on it, I would give it probably like 2.5. It wasn't a bad book. I just feel like it was a waste of my time. 90% of this I feel like was just them walking. The emotions were portrayed really well in this. I really like some of the characters, but I just feel like it was so slow. And it's not even a very long book. It was almost 400 pages. Maybe if it had been like 100 less, it would have been better. To be honest, I wouldn't really recommend it. The next book I read is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. I think this is such a fun cover. It's by Mark Haddon. It's about a boy who has autism and kind of how he hyperfixates on this dog that was killed in his neighborhood, and he wants to figure out how it was killed, but then the police start to suspect that he was the one that killed it, and his neighbor is suspecting that as well. And it kind of follows his parents' relationship and how him having autism has affected that. And it is honestly really sad. It's one of those books, it was so funny and witty, but at the end I felt depressed. I do recommend it, but it just kind of left me with a bittersweet feeling. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about it. The next book I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This book I gave 3.5 stars. If I'm gonna be honest, I'd probably rate it 3 stars now. I didn't love this book, but wait, because later Lucy Foley gets a little comeback. It's a mystery, very, very basic murder mystery. It's like at a wedding, someone is killed. Who did it? I really did like it. I think this was like the first mystery I read this year. It definitely got me into mystery, but it was not my favorite book. I wrote on my reading journal that it was dragged out from about 40% to 80%. The next ones I have are a series, so I'm going to do them all together even though I didn't read them back to back. I have The Summer I Turned Pretty, It's Not Summer Without You, and We'll Always Have Summer. These books are about Belly, who with her mom and brother go every summer to a beach house, which is owned by their mom's best friend, and the mom's best friend's sons are always there, and so it's a love triangle between Belly and the 2 sons, Jeremiah and Conrad. Let me know who you, like, what team you guys are on. I'm Team Conrad. I think most people are, but so these books I really liked. I gave the first one 3.75 stars, second one 5 stars, the third one 4 stars. In general, I would give this a like 4.5 star overall for the series. It's such a fun series, but there are times in it that will literally make you so angry. It makes no sense what the characters are doing, but I also feel like these are young characters. They're all like ranging kind of 15 to 20-ish, and they're making stupid decisions, and you feel annoyed at them, but you also understand why they did what they did because they're at a dumb age. And I honestly related to the main character, Belly, a lot. Not in the fact that I've ever been in a love triangle with 2 brothers, but in the fact that she was really immature sometimes, and I just kind of look back and remember myself being younger, like 12, 13, 14, and the strong emotions that she felt sometimes, like feeling embarrassed or feeling frustrated or angry at other people for making fun of her, leaving her out, things like that. I feel that. And so although it was like irritating the way she acted sometimes, I definitely feel like it was so realistic. They did make me cry. I think that you should look up trigger warnings because for me these were really hard to read because of something personal that was going on. And so they made me cry a lot. I think if you're an average person, they might make you cry a little bit or maybe not at all. But if the thing that happens in these, I don't want to spoil it. If the thing in this has happened to you or someone that you care about, it would be a really hard read for you. The next book I read was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I loved this book. I gave it 4.5. This is a YA closed door romance, so nothing inappropriate happens where you can read it. I really liked that. It made me a little teary-eyed. Again, this has the same trope that The Summer I Turned Pretty had. That is kind of a trigger warning. and for me, I feel like it was a little unnecessary in this one. This was an enemies to lovers and like kind of a love triangle. I think that this did enemies to lovers really well. This has a lot of like music and rom-com references, which I thought was super cute. The next book I read is When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner. This book is nonfiction. Honestly, I'm not going to talk about it very much. It's basically a book. The tagline says, "Where is God when you need him most?" I bought this book because someone really close to me was going through something really hard. And so this is kind of like all of the nonfiction books that I read this year are kind of related to this. I was just trying to kind of find answers about certain things. I was trying to help out my friend who was going through something really hard. It's a religious like self-help book kind of about grief. I don't like regret reading it, but I don't think a lot came out of reading it. Another thing is I don't think that you could expect him to have all the answers. The title was very promising. Why bad things happen to good people. I was like, oh, maybe it'll have the answer. But obviously if it had the answer, this would be a best-selling book, and I've never heard of it before. So that's that. It's not bad, but I don't really recommend it necessarily. The next book I read was Putting an X Through Anxiety, which I think I might have over here. Yeah, so this is a teeny tiny book. This was the shortest book I read this year. I was having some issues with anxiety attacks over the summer, so my mom bought me this. It's a book by a Christian author, and I'm pretty sure he's a pastor in Atlanta, Georgia. But it's just about kind of getting rid of your anxiety or overcoming it as a Christian. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. It has some good insights and advice, but I think that it's better for somebody who maybe has like a situational anxiety. If you're somebody who's just chemically, you have an imbalance and you have anxiety because of that, I don't think this is really going to help, because that book is not going to balance your chemicals. For me, it wasn't like super helpful, but I think in general, as far as like stress, if you're just stressed, this might be a good read. The next book I have is Pride and Prejudice. I'm gonna get hate for this. I didn't like this book. Everybody says like, oh, this is the OG enemies to lovers. The romance is so good. I did not get it. I gave it 3.25 stars. I think, to be honest, the only reason I gave it 3.25 stars is because Jane Austen is a genius with her writing, and she's so funny. So there's a lot of like really funny, witty things within this. But this basically delves into the Bennet sisters' lives and their romances as a way of analyzing the class structure in 1800s England. To me, like, I feel like this is marketed as a romance, but I don't feel like the romance is really front and center in this book. Not my favorite, and not because there wasn't a romance, it just to me was kind of boring. The next book I read was Divine Disruption. This one is a book written by a Christian family who went through a really hard time with a couple family members dying close together. I don't really think that this gave me a lot of information that I didn't already know. Delves into why God allows tragedy to happen. You know, if he cares about us, why does it happen? All these different people up here are authors, and so they all kind of did an interview style. And so it's just short, easy chapters where they each kind of talk about their experience. And so that is easy to read. It's quick. It's not a bad book. So the next books I'm going to be talking about is the Shatter Me series, which I actually read like over the past 3 months, but I'm just going to talk about them all at once. So I've read Shatter Me, Destroy Me, which is a novella, Unravel Me, Fracture Me, which is a novella, Ignite Me, and Restore Me, and then Shadow Me, which is a novella. So I have not read all of the books in the series, and I plan to finish it in 2023. Basically, I think that this series gets better as it goes. The first book didn't really wow me. I kind of didn't get the hype. But as it goes on, I think it gets better. I also think that reading the novellas adds a lot to it, so definitely read those. It's about a girl named Juliet who has a lethal touch. She kills people when she touches them, and so lots of people try to use her as a weapon. This is a dystopian society book. So yeah, it has a fun plot. There's a love triangle. I'm Team Warner so far. I think that Juliet is kind of a pick-me, which is annoying. But honestly, most YA books, every main female character is a pick-me, and it's just obnoxious. But once you get past that, you can enjoy it. It's not a bad book or anything like that. It's just a little bit cringy sometimes. The next book I have is The Hating Game, which I also borrowed from my library. And this book I just did not enjoy. I gave it a 2.75, but honestly, I probably would give it like a 2 when I think about it. I just think other people would enjoy it, so I give it a little bit of a higher rating. It's enemies to lovers, but it's obvious they like each other the whole time. It's annoying. It's a workplace romance, which is fun. It's about Lucy and Josh, who are competing for a promotion. It's okay. I mean, I don't really have much to say about it, to be honest. I'm not going to waste time talking about it. Everybody has talked about The Hating Game. I think it's just alright. Next book is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. If you guys remember earlier when I said that Lucy Foley would have a comeback, this is it. I loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I totally did not expect the ending. I loved this book. It kept me wanting to know what was happening next. I read it really quickly. I thought it was awesome. This is another mystery. It's kind of a family drama. There's a lot of suspense to it. It's about a girl named Jess who is set to move in with her brother Ben in his apartment in Paris, but when she arrives, he's nowhere to be found, so she's trying to figure out what happened to him. It was probably the best mystery that I read all year. The next book I read was If You Could See the Sun. I literally loved this book so much. I gave it 4.5 stars, but honestly, on second thought, I might give it 5. This is a really unique book. I have never heard of anything with this kind of storyline before. It's about a girl named Alice who doesn't fit in at her expensive board school. She's extremely smart, but her family is very poor, and she's only able to go to there because of a scholarship. Her parents tell her that she's going to have to go to another school because they don't have enough money. And she discovers a secret power that she has, and then she capitalizes upon that to make money so that she can continue to go to the school, and that ends up getting her into some kind of trouble. If I could recommend any book other than Where the Crawdads Sing or maybe The Paris Apartment, I would recommend this book. I think it's criminally underrated. I've never heard anybody talk about this book, and I love it. It's paranormal in some ways. There's a romance subplot that is really good. The only things I didn't like was the big, like, kind of climax of it, which I won't say what it is because it'd be a huge spoiler, but the big part that is kind of where things are starting to go wrong, I thought was so random and unrealistic. Other than that, though, great book. I seriously recommend it. So the next book I read is The Inheritance Games, which I also don't have because I got it from my library. So everybody has heard of this. It is about a girl who inherits a lot of money, and kind of randomly, she doesn't know the guy that she inherits it from, and she's basically trying to figure out, why did he give her this money? Why didn't he give it to his family? She's also trying to figure out which of his grandsons she wants to date, and so that's super fun. I gave this 4.25 stars. It's YA, so there's not really any spice in it. It's a fun, exciting, kind of light mystery. It's not creepy or spooky, but it's definitely mysterious and intriguing. So I really liked it. I haven't finished the series, but I'm planning to really soon. Next book I read is The Great Gatsby, which I don't have with me. But this book I gave 3.5 stars. I was a little disappointed by it because I've heard so many good things about it. But for me, it was just okay. It's the story of a guy named Nick Carraway who moves in next door to Jay Gatsby, and he's kind of just observing Jay's life, the scandals that he's a part of, the big parties that he throws. Most people have heard of this book or seen the movie. I've seen both movies, and I thought they were okay. The story and the commentary on the social status and norms is interesting. I like the point of view being from Nick's point of view rather than Gatsby's or Daisy's. For me, it wasn't the easiest to understand at all times, and it just wasn't my favorite overall, but it's definitely worth the praise it gets. I think it's still a really good book. It just wasn't really for me. The next book I read is Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table. This is another religious book by Louis Giglio, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. I think that if you're someone who is a Christian, or you're someone who's interested in becoming religious, and you just kind of have doubts, or you're not super, 100% into it, you should read this. And even if you're someone who is really into religion, but you just want to kind of get deeper with that, this is such a good book. I highly recommend it. The pastor, Louis Giglio, gives insight on troubles faced by Christians and how to not let the enemy win. He describes the importance of communing with God and not letting the enemy use bad occurrences as a foothold and a way to get into your life and a way to destroy your faith. So I thought this was super impactful. Like, a lot of Christian books just kind of fall flat. Like the two I mentioned earlier, they weren't bad, but they didn't really impact me a lot. This is a book I think about a lot, and I do feel like it changed my relationship with God and improved it in a lot of ways. So I really highly recommend this book to anybody looking to grow their faith. The next book I have is The 5 Love Languages. I listened to this as an audiobook, and I gave this 5 stars. It is basically talking about the 5 love languages. This is by Gary Chapman, the guy who created the 5 love languages. So a lot of people have heard of that, like physical touch, words of affirmation, etc. So it's basically talking about how to figure out what your love language is, what your partner's love language is, and how to effectively love one another. And it's kind of just like a guide for having a successful marriage. It's very simple and easy to understand, but just great ideas that you may not have considered. It's applicable to spouses, partners, but also children, parents, friends, anything. I recommend this to literally everybody. This is the very last book. I finished this on New Year's Eve, and this is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I thought this was a really good book. One of the best books I read this year. I gave it 4.25 stars. The only reason I didn't give it 5 is I think it was slightly slow. There are some sensitive topics. This is about World War II. It's about German occupation. If you've read The Book Thief and you love that book, you will also love this book. The Book Thief literally had me sobbing for like the last 30 minutes that I read it. And that was what I was hoping to get from this book, and I didn't get it. And so that's kind of where it fell flat, was it just didn't quite grab me like The Book Thief did. It's multi-POV, it has alternating timeline. It's the stories of 2 children, one who is a German and the other child is a young French girl. And so you could see how these two should be enemies and should hate each other, but it kind of just tells their story, and there's so much nuance that goes into it, and by the end I just think it goes full circle. It is so good. Like, the characterization in this is amazing. I just think the only really issue is it's a little bit slow in the beginning, but one of my top books for this year. And with that, these are all the books I read. Let me show you. I'm probably going to drop them because they're on a very wobbly stack. Yep. Okay, well, these are all the books I have that I read this year, but I had 36 total. It was a great year of reading, and I look forward to reading a lot more in 2023. I'll have lots more books to read and recommend for you guys, and I have lots more videos on the way, so I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Bye!